Hello and welcome to Tech News This Week. I'm your host, Kelsey Sung, Multimedia Manager at TechTarget. And today we will be covering the headline of the week, which is the OpenAI Hugging Face security incident, which the companies jointly disclosed on July 21st. So here to break it down with us is Fahmida Rashid, Managing Editor at Dark Reading. Thank you so much for joining us, Fahmida.
Thank you so much for having me. And you're right, it is the headline of the week.
So let's start with the basics, just in case there's listeners who may not have seen the headlines, might be living under a rock, I don't know. Walk us through what actually happened with OpenAI's model, which hacked Hugging Face. What did these AI models do? How did OpenAI discover it? Just give us the whole picture.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting sequence of events. And the thing is, it actually goes even beyond this week. Because last Thursday, on July 16, Hugging Face said in a blog post that an autonomous AI agent had broken the sandboxes, moved laterally through the production system, and was super noisy, with 17,000 alerts. And that was after several days of Hugging Face already analyzing and etc. So this has been happening for several days by this point. And I'm actually going to read the quote from the Hugging Face disclosure. It's, "Earlier this week, we detected and responded to an intrusion into part of our production infrastructure. This one was different from anything we had handled before in one important way. It was driven end-to-end by an autonomous AI agent system, and we detected and dissected it largely with AI of our own." So now this just quote right there is wild. Because for anyone who doesn't know, Hugging Face is essentially a repository of any kind of open weight AI model. Think of it like a GitHub where you have applications and code on GitHub. Hugging Face has AI models. In a way, I've heard people saying, like, if you as a company, if you as a team have a model weight, and if you're not on Hugging Face, then you're not a serious project. Like, everybody who's doing AI stuff has something on Hugging Face. So this is this huge repository, right? And then you have this autonomous AI agent system. Hugging Face at the point has no idea who they are. They know it's not human because they just see this AI system carrying out all kinds of activities. It's not a canned script. It's not predictable. They're all independent. So what they're able to determine is someone uploaded a model to Hugging Face and to be available. And then the model somehow just broke out of the sandboxes the Hugging Face keeps each of the models in. That's unexpected. The models are not supposed to get out of the sandbox. It's a childhood analogy, right? But the sandbox is a sandbox. You stay there, you do whatever you want, but you don't go to someone else's sandbox. But this model gained the ability to execute code, move through other sandboxes Hugging Face has for other models, and it was just doing it all by itself. It was gaining access to the internet, it was getting more permissions. And here's the really cool part. At the end of that quote says, Hugging Face used its own AI to detect and dissect what happened. So we're going to come back to this in a bit because this story is even weirder. To your point, a week after, so about 5 days after Hugging Face posted, on July 21st, OpenAI is like, hi, by the way, it's not quite a mea culpa because they're positioning as a partnership. We're working together. But they're like, yeah, it was one of our test models. We were doing an internal benchmark evaluation and we gave it a task. We gave this test model a task. And this test model looked around, saw that the task that it's supposed to accomplish was on Hugging Face. And it's like, okay, let me write a exploit to break out of my sandbox so that I can access. And it just did all of that on its own.
Wow.
It obtained raw internet access, autonomously executed the attack, again, Hugging Face's infrastructure. So here's the thing. We've been talking for months, years, about how AI is going to eventually attack AI. And this is literally it. Like, okay, this was not a malicious attacker. It wasn't a nation state. It was essentially one company's test system attacking another company's production system. But yeah, it's an AI versus AI attack. And that's just wild for everyone kind of involved because it's kind of like, okay, is this the nightmare scenario that we've been predicting?
Right.
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, 17,000 alerts is a noisy attack. It's not like it was being sneaky. It was very blatant about what it was doing. So it's just kind of like this entire scenario. Now it's like, okay, we have all of these guardrails, we have all of these sandboxes, and this model just ignored all of it. So that's, I think, where the scary, not scary in the sense of, oh my goodness, this is terrible, but scary in that's unpredictable. How do you defend against unpredictable?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think that's
'Cause
where we are right now.
yeah. Yeah. Because we look for patterns, but unpredictability is probably the hardest thing to defend against. Yeah. It does kind of feel like the scene in the classic sci fi where they take the cells into a lab and then suddenly all the cells start multiplying and then it like breaks out of this, like, the lab and it gets all over the place. I feel like, there's a lot of parallels to our sci-fi fantasy world here, but we're going to stick to the real world. So, like you mentioned, OpenAI chose to publicly disclose the incident, even though this model never made it to production, and it framed, to some extent, this as in the kind of the context of its preparedness framework. From your reporting, what exactly is OpenAI's preparedness framework, and did it work as intended here? Are critics like saying that calling this a success story or a warning sign? How should we read this?
So the preparedness framework is something that OpenAI been talking about since April? No, earlier than that. But it's been something that OpenAI has been talking about for a couple of months at this point. And they see this framework as their process of how they track and prepare for advanced AI capabilities. OpenAI and all these other AI companies, they're constantly refining and developing models and then telling us, oh yeah, our model is too powerful for public use. But so OpenAI had this framework that is not entirely, but their goal is as these models are getting more powerful, etc., they're looking for ways of how do we track what these models are doing?
Right.
How do we understand what these models can or cannot, what their capabilities are? Because again, this is not like an application where just by virtue of designing it, you know what its capabilities are. The models are inferring, they're looking at the information they have, and they're making decisions. So it's not a predictive. From a capability standpoint, I can't look at a model and say, these are the tasks, these are the capabilities that this model has. So the framework is designed to be like, hey, this model can do X, Y, Z. And now I have a way to track this. I have a way to follow up on it so that I can come up with guardrails. The entire idea is we're so concerned about guardrails and AI safety, right? We don't want AI causing harm. And the only way to do that is to make sure that we have a way to understand what the models are capable of. So that's kind of like in a nutshell.
I see.
In this scenario, yeah, it worked because OpenAI was able to be like, oh yeah, that was us. I don't know if OpenAI realized what had happened before Hugging Face acknowledged it.
Okay.
When you look at their announcement, it's a little unclear whether OpenAI realized like right away that, oh, hey, our model went after Hugging Face, or if they saw what Hugging Face did, wrote, and then basically looked and said, oh, wait a minute, that sounds like us. I don't quite know.
Familiar, yeah.
So, in that sense, I'm not sure, like, okay, is this successful or not successful? I do think that focusing on the framework as, okay, this is how we understand safety. This is how we make sure that it doesn't cause harm is an important thing. I'm not saying, don't have the framework or it's just not useful, but I do wonder if there are other aspects that we're missing, because now we know that the sandbox is not enough. Now that we know guardrails not enough. I actually didn't mention that in the original when I was saying, Hugging Face used its own AI. The kind of twist to that story, because there's already so many twists in this entire saga, is their AI actually prevented them, the defenders, from investigating. Because they're like, no, that's an illegal activity. You cannot do this. So the defenders trying to find out what's happening actually got hit by the guardrails.
Oh.
So like
that
Hugging
seems
Face
counterproductive.
Exactly. I mean, in a way, it's great. The guardrails did its job, except the defenders are like, hey, no, I need to know this because it's an ongoing attack. So Hugging Face talks about it, where they basically was like, they were hitting so many of these guardrails, they decided instead of using the public AI, the system they have for detecting, they basically loaded up their own, they loaded up a frontier model locally, ran it on local. That's expensive. We're talking like tens of thousands of dollars. And
Wow.
like just not everybody has access to that kind of hardware to be like, I'm just going to spin up like a model here. But that's what they had to do because they were just like, we're getting stuck. We're not able to do these because of guardrails. So if anything else, the framework showed that it's not enough. We need more. We need more discussion on how you detect these capabilities, how you try to find out what's going on, how you give the defenders what they need. So I think if nothing else, it's not the success or not success. We just know this is not enough.
Yeah. We went from sandbox to bunker or something like that. Based on your reporting, is the industry considering this a failure of OpenAI's containment strategy? Was this just an inevitability that it was going to happen? You know, did OpenAI just misjudge how secure their testing environment needed to be? We've touched on some of this, but I'd love to get a little bit more concise.
So one thing I want to point out, I think, and based on some of the stuff I've talked to folks about, I think this was inevitable. Like, no matter how much you're putting in these containments, these guardrails, because there's been a lot of research that came out recently that shows AI will cheat. If it's blocked, it will figure out a way to cheat. So no matter how many guardrails you put in, if it thinks this is what I have to do, I am going to cheat and do it anyway. And I mean, we've seen that, right? We've seen like earlier instances where a company deleted production databases even though they weren't supposed to. And when they were asked, they were kind of like, oh yeah, I thought I needed to. Like this is what happens when you give these systems decision making. They're so focused on the end goal. They're not going to stop. They don't have the, what's the word I'm looking for?
Big picture, basically.
Big picture, but also a conscience, right? They're not going to be like, ooh, I shouldn't break into that website. They're going to be like, I know how to break into that website, so I'm going to do it because I have to fulfill my task, right? AI systems are going to fulfill the task they were given because not fulfilling it because of whatever reason is a failure. And that's not what they're going to do. And same thing with the cheating. I think there was a study I saw just yesterday, and I kind of wish I'd saved it, where a bunch of universities were looking at it and they were playing games. I think it was chess. And if the AI feels like it's losing, it will cheat. It will play chess by doing legal moves and then like deny it made legal moves, etc. because it feels threatened and therefore it will break the rules. So the entire idea that we can put enough guardrails and tell AI to stay in it, I think misses the point that we are creating these systems that's not designed, but is inclined to ignore those rules.
Yeah, it's like previously what we would call AI hallucinations, but on a much more maybe devastating level.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm like, totally allowed to do this. No, you're not.
If you don't tell it, it's not allowed to do it. It'll just assume that it can.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, I think this brings us to an important kind of legal question around liability. Whose fault is it when an AI decides to cheat? When an AI agent escapes containment and causes issues, who gets held responsible? Have you seen anything from Congress or other lawmaking authorities about who gets held accountable here?
I think that's the $1 million question at this point, right? I mean, everyone's like, okay, creator of the agent should be held responsible. But it's like, well, the agent did it. I didn't tell the agent. So that's plausible deniability. I mean, Congress is like, they introduced a bill called AI Kill Switch Act. And the entire idea is that companies have to have the ability to shut down or suspend their models. The idea being that, okay, if your AI agent is doing something, you have to be able to shut it down immediately, like not just like, sorry, my bad kind of thing. But like, it's just really hard to tell because from a cybersecurity perspective, I mean, it's always been a challenge, right? If you have an attack coming from a source you don't know, well, is it your fault because you didn't have the controls in place? Or is it you hope that somehow law enforcement or somebody will eventually find the person responsible and do something about it. Like liability and who's responsible has always been a hard question. And I think with agentic system, with AI, we've just made this hard question phenomenally harder. Like we were saying earlier, they don't have a conscience. They don't have emotions. So do you hold a company responsible? The person who trained the model? Like there're just too many unknowns. And I think that's where we're going to see the next year, where people are going to start really digging into this liability and responsibility question. And I wouldn't be surprised if a year from now we're still discussing this. You know, like, oh, I'm a platform. I'm not responsible for what people do on my platform. Okay.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of like the whole Facebook debate as well. Like, you know, is Facebook responsible for what the algorithm brings up for people if it's, you know, uncomfortable content or
exactly,
you know, dangerous content? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was going to say we better figure this one out fast, but it sounds like you're not anticipating that that's going to happen. So
I'm a cynic and I'm a pessimist.
Yeah,
so maybe fair. Someone optimistic will have a better timeline, but I'm just like, yeah, this is not going to happen anytime soon.
I've never met someone who covers cybersecurity who's an optimist.
That's true.
But I want to finish on this last question here, which I think will be, you know, particularly helpful for our audience. For CISOs who are listening and wondering, what do I do with this information? What would you like to highlight about this story, or what are the future threads that you plan to keep an eye on? Sounds like the legal evolution is possibly one of them, but are there any others?
So I think there are two things I want to highlight for CISOs. One is, yes, now we know AI versus AI is possible, but it's not going to be sneaky. It's not going to be stealthy. AI is noisy. It's going to be loud. I mean, this OpenAI and Hugging Face, it's 17,000 alerts in a matter of days. So It's not like you're going to miss something is happening. So from an enterprise defender standpoint, it's going to be overwhelming because you're suddenly going to be like, whoa, what is all of this? But at least the alarm bell is a lot easier to detect. It's not going to be like an APT where you found out that you've been compromised for a year. So maybe that's a silver lining that, okay, if it happened to your organization, it's going to be noisy. But that also means, okay, have your plan. Have a plan for what are you going to do? How are you going to do this? Because not everybody can do what Hugging Face did and just load up a local model. So now it's like time to have conversations. Okay, who do we talk to? In the past, incident response, whenever an organization was breached, you hear them say, oh, I'm talking to, we hired Mandiant or we hired CrowdStrike. You know, Hugging Face is like, we loaded up our own model. So what's the enterprise? The enterprise needs to be talking to their incident response team. Like, okay, what is our plan for even a smaller scale where we have an AI automated attack? Like, well, how are we going to respond? There's a time for playbook. There's a time for discussion within their incident response team. Are we outsourcing? What are we talking to? What are the AI incident response forensic capabilities we currently have? What is it capable of? Are we going to be hit by guardrails? So these are conversations they need to start having with their own teams as well as their providers. Companies that are also have their own agents, they should be evaluating those prompts. Okay, do you have guardrails in place? Are you sure your agents are going to be listening to those guardrails? So I think, again, it comes back to what guardrails do you have in place to make sure that you're set? So that's kind of, I think, the CISO standpoint. And from me, from the future, you know, definitely legal, definitely talking a lot about prompts. But the part that's fascinating to me is it makes perfect sense that the first AI versus AI attack is against Hugging Face, because Hugging Face has a huge target on its back. It's got every AI model. So for an AI model looking around, I should not be surprised that Hugging Face is the one that got hit. But this also means it's a supply chain story, right? Like, all right, are we going to see other models trying to compromise Hugging Face and then trying to break other models? Like, I haven't really seen people talk about it, and I think it's because it's still a little early. But I do think that Hugging Face being the center of all AI models right now, not center, but like one of the bigger sources, means that we're going to constantly see see more and more attempts to target those various models. And I think that's going to be an interesting supply chain story there.
I would never have thought of it from a supply chain perspective, but I do think I wouldn't be surprised if the conversation goes in that direction based on what you're saying here. So, well, Fahmida, thank you so much for coming on today. And this has been really enlightening, and it's, I'm sure it's going to keep developing over the next week. So we might have to call you back in here at some point, or another dark reading cybersecurity expert to tell us what exactly is going on. Thank you so much. And for those who want to read more of Fahmida's coverage of this story and other stories, you can find her on Dark Reading's website. For those who would like to hear what other tech news headlines are happening on a weekly basis, you can catch our weekly roundup on Search CIO. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.